L-aħħar parti tal-programm tagħna ħdejja fil-fatt għandi l-ħipnoterapista fil-fatt Deborah Marshall Warren fejn flimkien magħha anke se nitkellmu dwar dak kollu li jedna anke matul din is-serata tal-lejla. Jingħaqdu miegħi Alfred Difesa, l-ebda ma bżonn l-ebda introduzzjoni għaliex nafuh anke fil-programmi tiegħi u għandna wkoll Nicole, a friend of Deborah u anke kellha esperjenza wkoll dwar hypnotherapija. So Deborah, it's a state of relaxation, hypnotherapy.
Very much so.
What is exactly, what you use, what you do in a session of hypnotherapy?
The reasons people come to me are to build confidence, to build self-esteem, to feel a sense of empowerment, to build self-belief, to feel better about themselves in all ways. What I do is I guide them into a state of relaxation. One cannot make a person go into hypnosis. Hypnosis is a guided state, so it is a voluntary state. Simply someone like myself has tools to help a person go into a state of relaxation. But there are many ways in which one goes into a state of hypnosis. For example, there are many people in Malta who participate in the many yoga classes here. And a yoga teacher at the end of a class will do something which relaxes a person from the top of their head to the tips of their toes. It's called the pose of repose. And in that pose, a person is gently guided into relaxation. But in my world, that would be called a progressive induction. A yoga teacher simply calls it the relaxation at the end of a class. So the reason I share this is that people are very familiar with the state of hypnosis. When you have a facial, many women go to beauticians here in Malta, maybe men too.
Yes.
You go into a delicious state of relaxation, and that's all this state of hypnosis is.
Alfred, her voice, it's a gift. Tiġa tress eklejn rilassament, x'taħseb l-opinjoni tiegħek?
Jiena naħseb li il-vuċi tagħmel tilab il-bal. May I ask a question? May I ask you? But my question is this, because it's the sound which makes it the sound of your voice. And not only the sound, the person listening to the sound of your voice. So when you say you hypnotize, what do you hypnotize? Do you hypnotize the resistances? Because people were talking about subconscious. Now, yes, the subconscious plays a part, but is the subconscious not my will? So are you playing with my will? Are you taking my power away? Can you play with my subconscious in such a way that I can lose my will and give my power to you? Because this is what people are afraid of. And even myself, in the past, when I approached the subject, I said I was afraid that I'm going to give my fate away. People can take anything from me. Can you describe this to us?
Let me begin with what you said at the end.
Yes.
When someone has a panic attack, or they experience anxiety or nervousness, would you not say, Alfred, that a person is out of control?
Yes.
And what hypnosis can do is help a person gain control. When a person has a panic attack emerges completely out of the blue. And people have no warning. It's like a volcanic eruption. So when people say to me, oh, I don't know if I wish to do hypnosis because I do not wish to lose control, and they come to me with panic attack, I'll say, well, surely you are out of control right now.
May I interfere a little bit?
Yes.
When I have a panic attack, it doesn't happen all the time. So do you help me while I am in the panic attack, or do you help me when, because if the panic attack is not there, do you understand what I mean? Sometimes panic attack happens at a certain sequence of time in a more strategic way. So, but if I come to you and I'm not under that influence, how can you help me?
I will take a person in deep relaxation to the moment, the situation, the circumstance when the panic attacks began to seed, began to sprout. Now that could be a moment when a person was put on the spot, especially in school, where a fairly stern teacher asked a question and a person didn't know the answer, or they fumbled or they stumbled when reading a passage in a book, and they felt a sense of humiliation, and their anxiety levels rose. What can happen in later life is that these experiences have a gradual cumulative effect and suddenly explode.
I see. So if I understand well, we have a bank. This is called the memory bank. And we really have a lot of credit there because our bank is full of memories.
As we said before,
So how do you tap? Because you must have a conscious way, not a subconscious way. A conscious way of tapping into my inner bank, which is full. I mean, and we call it subconscious because I'm not aware of it. So my bank is full, and yet it is called subconscious because we lose awareness. So things are happening, but it's as if I am deciding things which I'm not aware that I'm deciding. Am I right in this?
Let me say the subconscious, as you said, it's like a memory bank. It's like the hard disk on a computer.
Yes, yes.
And you're recording everything
Yes.
as we progress through our lives. The conscious mind has a job of filtering all of that information. If we remembered every embarrassing moment we'd ever experienced, most of us wouldn't function. So the conscious mind filters all of our memories. When a person, let's say, has a panic attack, it's when it's almost as though the emotions begin to leak because there are so many emotions around anxiety and nervousness, or depression, let's say. To go back to your initial question, if you imagine we have hypnosis is a right brain activity. We have a left brain, our left our brain is, I'm generalizing here, is associated with all those activities of logic. Our right brain is much more intuitive, more spontaneous, that creative side. And in hypnosis, I'm guiding a person to access that right-hand side of the brain. So the left, Alfred, kind of steps into the wings.
So are you saying that the left is my past and the right is my present?
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that because that logical, critical faculty,
Yes.
the only thing one loses in hypnosis is that critical faculty, that negative, which steps into the wings, but it's listening, because it does listen, but what happens is the right-hand side of the brain comes to the fore. And that I am working, or a hypnotherapist is working with the more creative side of the brain, and that part of the brain which supports access to our deepest wisdom and inner knowing about ourselves and our lives.
So if I understand, even I don't want just to...
Yes.
But sometimes if I come to you with a problem with an issue, and you tap into my energies, do you find sometimes that I want you to work on an issue, but you find the need to work on another issue? Do you ever find these things?
I am entirely and absolutely driven by the wish of my client. So if someone comes to build confidence and self-esteem, that is exactly what we will do. However, what can happen now, because it's a great question, is that someone might say, oh, and I bite my nails. And we may not touch on them biting their nails, but as their confidence builds and shines, they just stop biting their nails. It's as though it falls away, because in this spaghetti junction, one of the strands within the spaghetti was nail biting, but it so diminished. People simply say, oh my goodness, and I stopped biting my nails. A gentleman who came earlier in the week for public speaking, he wrote and said, oh my goodness, I haven't bitten my nails. So it's quite common because we have these activities, behaviors which we do. Years ago someone came for something entirely different and said, oh, and I'm able to eat fish. You know, they'd had a phobia, they didn't like fish.
Yes. Okay. Nicole is her friend, but she has an experience with Deborah regarding hypnotherapy.
Yes.
It was not embarrassed that you've been with her and saying all your life with her.
Embarrassing?
It was not embarrassing?
Not in the least. Because Deborah's a very special friend of mine, so I trust her implicitly. And I will have spoken to Deborah about a lot of my personal issues anyway. In fact, I was having some rather horrible problems in my personal life, and confiding in Deborah anyway as a friend. And Deborah suggested that a hypnotherapy session, might be beneficial for me. That's what he said.
The timing was good, wasn't it?
The timing was perfect. So I agreed, and it's a lovely gesture on Deborah's part. However, like a lot of people, I think, like yourself, I was a little bit anxious about the process, at the actual process of hypnotherapy. And I discussed it with you, if you remember.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously I trust Deborah implicitly, and it was my first experience, and it was wonderful.
That's good. That's great.
Yeah.
The session was great.
The session was, more than great. In fact, I was thinking this morning when I was on my way here, I remember when I came out of this deep relaxation, the first thing I did was laugh. Do you remember? I laughed out loud. It was absolutely incredible, completely spontaneous. It was as though so much of my anger, if you like, inner anger and grief and everything, all the other stuff I was going through, has just been, dealt with, and I just felt lighter and more confident and less anxious.
Good. She is reminding me, Ivan, of, when you have a glass of water and you have the sediment, which is there. Now, let's talk about anger. There's a measure of anger in my system. Now, I suppose you might deal with the anger which is at the surface at the time, but you do not touch the anger which is stuck deep down in the core of the being. So there's a measure how much anger I can process, is it? So, how do you see how much you can deal with in a person? How much that person can offer energy to himself to deal with a measure of anger which the person is ready to deal with? How would you, am I making sense?
Yes, I would. First of all, it's important to say that a person will present that which they're ready to deal with.
Yes.
So I didn't, in answering your previous question, a person remains, as I say, very much in control. The other lovely thing about working with a person, and I think that was true of Nicola, when a person is reconciling the events in their lives, they can also speak privately. All I need is a yes to continue the process. So what is beautiful about the work is that a person can work very privately, and a lot of anger, let's generalizing a little bit, but it didn't start last week. It started when a person grew up with a brutal father, or they grew up witnessing a mother who was violently treated, be it physically and mentally, and eventually left home and abandoned them. Of course, the mother didn't deliberately abandon the child, but she needed to remove herself from a situation of danger. But that information, which is so can be so deeply wounding for a person, they may not wish to speak aloud, and they absolutely can speak privately.
When you say speak privately, do you mean they don't need even to tell you? You don't need, it sounds as if you don't need much information.
I do not. That's absolutely true.
So I don't have to tell you that I, killed a cat and I feel angry and guilty about it. Maybe I don't want to tell you that I killed the cat. Just an example. You see what
absolutely, Alfred, it's a great example because I did once work with a woman and she dropped a kitten. And the kitten died as a child, and she still had not forgiven herself.
Yes.
And she didn't tell me in hypnosis. She said, Deborah, this is what happened. I did drop a kitten, and I am still living with the guilt that I kept it secret. So, and of course, we will say, our adult will say, oh my goodness, but it was a deep and shocking issue, but she couldn't believe that her adult had held that guilt all those years.
I had one of the people speaking when Ivan was talking to them, and she really amazed me when she said that a person as a child could have picked up an emotion. But then, when the person is grown up and comes to hypnosis, then the person can see that same emotion, but see it from a space of an adult, not from a child. This is amazing.
Yes.
Imagine a child.
Yes.
There is a lot of child abuses. I'm not referring sexual only, but even psychological.
Yes.
And as a child of 4 or 5 who's abused by a parent or something, and then this is discovered because that abuse is still working on the person. So when one is getting into a deeper relaxation, what I understand is as if you take the person deeper in his ocean, away from the waves. And when you go deeper in the ocean, then you can see the waves, and then you can deal with the waves, but I'm not a child anymore. I can deal with this. So
and the adult, your adult self,
can
can support and empower the child.
Yes.
And give their child sometimes their childhood back.
Yes.
They can change the perspective to view
and give
what
permission,
happened.
and give permission to himself.
To love themselves.
To love
again.
themselves. This is amazing, isn't it?
And also forgiveness as well is the other issue, I think.
Yes.
Very strong.
So, Deborah, the last word for those people who wants to improve their life, what can you say to them?
I really want them to know that hypnotherapy and hypnosis and therapy can support them to come from a place of wellness, not of illness, and for them to understand that they can begin to understand how their thoughts and their thinking is programming them into emotional states of depression and illness. And if they become enlightened as to how these 90,000 thoughts a day, which apparently we have, most of them are the same. So if you constantly say, I'm anxious, that is what your body and your whole emotional molecular structure will hear.
Normally we say 50,000 a day.
It's like a mantra. It's like meditation.
It's like a rosario.
I want people to say, I am well, I am healthy, I believe in myself, and I'm possible. I want them to think of themselves as the best and the brightest they can be, and to shine with health.
Yes.
And if they work on their mind, their health is going to get better and better.
Cool. Nicole, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Grazie lilek, Alfred. Thanks and welcome in our program Vespri. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hope we'll meet in the near future in our programs. Jina nispera li wassalnilkom is-suġġett tal-tana illum b'mod konċis, tajna ħafna informazzjoni anke matul il-programm, anke permezz ta' esperjenzi. Nagħmel appuntament magħkom għal bħallum 20 fl-istess ħin, fil-lista ta' filgħaxija il-ħadd. Nhar il-ħadd għandna programm verament interessanti, nixtieqkom illi tkunu magħna. Sa dan it-tant kif dejjem il-programm tagħna Alla li jista' kollox jagħtina lejl kwiet u tmiem tajjeb. Grazzi ħafna l-isħabi kollha, Adriana Zoppardi, Evan Apela taħt id-direzzjoni ta' Roberto Pirrone, jiena Evan Bartolo nagħmel appuntament magħkom bħallum ġimgħa. Saħħa il-lejli tajjeb.